Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 67 of Chalk Talk, brought to you by the Painted Lines. I'm your host, Shane Half, and you can follow me on Twitter at halfandhalf_TPL. I'm joined today from Philly Sports Alliance, Ryan Reese, who I just got done doing another show with, Talking Birds, but that's not what we're doing today. Ryan, how are you doing this evening?
Doing pretty good, Shane. Thanks for having me on, as always. Love any time I can talk, get a break from talking about the Eagles and talk about the NFL for sure.
Absolutely, and that's what we're here to do today. We've got a great show lined up for you guys. We are going to be previewing the AFC North and the AFC East. So this will be the conclusion of our divisional preview series. This is the first one that Ryan has been on with me, but we're looking forward to diving into that. So if your team is not in the AFC North or East, just be sure you check out our archives. We've broken down the additions, the losses for all the teams, predicted over-under win totals, all of that good stuff. But before we get into it, in our new segment, Question of the Day, the question we're posing today is what team that made the playoffs last season will miss it entirely this year? So, Ryan, I'm going to throw it to you first. Give me a team in the playoffs last year that's going to miss the postseason this year.
You know, when you originally posed this question to me, I kind of went through a bunch of different names, and there were, a couple that's kind of, I thought maybe they're kind of on the cusp, but there's one that stood out to me in the AFC, and that is the New England Patriots. I, know we're about to talk about the AFC East in a bit. I just think that division as a whole got so much better, and they didn't. And just given the talent of the rest of the AFC, obviously the AFC West got crazy good. I just don't see how they can squeak in again as a wild card team and make the playoffs once again this year.
Yeah, reports out of their camp has not been good. Their offense has kind of been a dumpster fire, which I don't know what you expect when you hand the offense to Matt Patricia, a defensive coordinator,
Right.
and Joe Judge, who was a special teams coach before he became the head coach of a dumpster fire in New York and then got fired. So I don't know what they're expecting. We're going to get into the Patriots. We could probably do a whole show about just what in the world is going on in New England.
Right.
It really feels like Bill Belichick is just playing a game of like, how difficult can I make this on myself and still make the playoffs? Like, let's throw away first round picks. Let's bring in failed defensive coordinators to call offensive plays. Who knows? I don't understand what's going on there, but
yeah, especially after the draft they had, and then just the offseason was not very good for them. Yeah, I agree. I think Bill might have officially lost it. He had a pretty darn good run, but I don't think he's going to be winning anytime soon.
I'm a big Age of Empires fan and player, and I'm not great. I'm okay, but there's a guy that is he's a professional caster, but he started a meme account where he plays Age of Empires, which is a really intensive, like real-time strategy game. You use your whole keyboard, all of that. And he started an account where he plays it with a PlayStation controller. And so like he's this really good player that's playing at a low level because he's doing that. Feels like what Bill Belichick is doing right now. He's just sitting here and he's just like doing these challenge. I don't know, but yeah, I'm with you. I don't expect the Patriots to have a very good season. I certainly would not take the odds on them making the playoffs. So I'm gonna go with another AFC team. Actually, I'm gonna go with another AFC team that we're gonna talk about in this podcast, and this one might shock some people because they were in the Super Bowl last year. Yeah, that's right. The Cincinnati Bengals, I'm predicting to miss the playoffs this year. And I'm so frustrated with the Bengals. Maybe I'm letting that influence my judgment here. But this is a team that was in the playoffs last year. They are contenders in the AFC. They have the perfect situation. They have a quarterback on a rookie contract. They have a receiver, a stud receiver, a top 10 receiver in the league on a rookie contract. They should have been going wild in free agency. Go get some players. Sign Jesse Bates. The guy's not even practicing because you won't pay him. Go get Von Miller. And Ndamukong Suh is still in free agency. Like, get him in the building tomorrow. Anthony Barr signed a $2 million deal with Dallas. Like, how is that guy not a Bengal. Eli Apple is their CB1. Like, how did they not go make a play for J.C. Jackson or Stephon Gilmore or Levi Wallace or
Right.
heck, go get Steven Nelson? Like,
They had
he
to
would have been an improvement there.
re-sign Eli Apple.
Yeah,
They
and
made
that guy
they
just
made
got
it's
COVID
not
in
like they were
the
stuck with him.
playoffs.
They made the active choice to bring him back.
Right. I just and it's this thing like everyone's like, oh, it's it's this cute thing the Bengals do where they don't spend any money. Like, knock it off. You've got the best situation in the NFL to construct a Super Bowl roster
Yeah.
with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase on rookie deals. You're saving so much money that you could be spending elsewhere. And people will say, they say they're in the playoffs last year. They were in the Super Bowl and they improved the offensive line. But people forget they were 10-7 last year and they just got hot at the right time in a division with no competition. Baltimore was devastated by injuries. Baker Mayfield was hurt in Cleveland. Big Ben was Big Ben, actively destroying the Steelers. They were tremendously lucky with injuries last year. Per Football Outsiders, they were first in adjusted opponent games lost. So, like, when they face teams, they face the most injured teams out there. And the gap between them and number 2 on the list was the same as the gap between number 2 and number 16. Like, they had tremendous injury luck. According to Warren Sharp, whose strength of schedule metrics I really like to use, he said they had the second easiest schedule last year, and that was without factoring in injuries. And this year, and we'll get into it, they have the 26th easiest schedule. So, harder schedule, probably some regression in a division that I expect some teams to be better in this year. And so I think the Bengals are still a very good team, and it's hard to reconcile. Like, I actually think they got better. They improved their offensive line. I just don't think it's enough in a stacked AFC with some of the teams that they have gunning for them this year. So that's now that we've lost all the Bengals fans on the podcast. Let's dive into the AFC East, and we'll circle back to the North here at the end. So let's start off with the Buffalo Bills. And so I'll throw a schedule graphic up here and I'll throw out some of their additions and losses. In the draft, they spent a first-round pick on cornerback Kaiir Elam. They also got James Cook, the running back out of Georgia, and the wide receiver Khalil Shakur. They also drafted punt god Matt Ariza. They also went out and they signed Von Miller in free agency. They brought in a pair of defensive tackles in Daquan Jones and Tim Settle. They got Roger Saffold, the offensive guard. Defensive end Jordan Phillips, and they traded for tight end O.J. Howard. On the losses side, they lost defensive tackle Harrison Phillips. They lost longtime CB2 Levi Wallace, defensive end Mario Addison, offensive guard John Feliciano, wide receiver Cole Beasley, and outside linebacker A.J. Klein. I think you can look at those additions and those subtractions, and you can say, like, where they swapped a defensive end for a defensive end, where they swapped a corner for a drafted corner. I think they got better at all of those positions. Their strength of schedule is 18th in the league, according to Warren Sharp's metrics, which Warren Sharp doesn't use. He uses the Vegas odds for this year, the Vegas win totals for this year, rather than how a team finished last year. So that number may look a little different than others you've seen, but it's projecting out strength of schedule this year, not basing it off of last year's roster. So they've got a around average NFL schedule in terms of difficulty. Their Vegas over-under now is at 11.5 wins, with minus 150 on the over, plus 120 on the under. Ryan, talk to me about the Bills, a team that was so close to making it past the Chiefs, 13 seconds away. How do you feel about the Bills heading into this season?
Yeah, the Bills just kind of always felt like they were on the cusp of something, and I think we, as the season last year kind of played itself out, I think most people kind of had that. Okay, they had that look, they had that feeling of a team that could go pretty far, and unfortunately, overtime, coin flip, yada yada yada. We all know the story. Didn't go their way, and they were bounced out of the playoffs. But I honestly think with all the moves that they made, bringing in Von Miller is obviously a great move. They lost Jerry Hughes, which is a longtime Bill. So yeah, I'd say that's a slight upgrade. Obviously Von Miller's getting up there too, but I think what they lost on the offensive side, I think they gained, bringing in Jameson Crowder and OJ Howard certainly helps to add to, with Dawson Knox. So I think they probably status quo, maybe slightly improved with the offseason that they had. And just given the fact that you're getting another year of Josh Allen, who is just getting better and better and better and better, I don't see that changing. So I think, just looking at this division, I think it is 100% theirs to lose. While I think a lot of the teams in this division did get better, um, I just don't think anybody's going to eclipse the Bills just because they were already so much better than the rest of this division. Um, so yeah, I think they didn't do anything too splashy. I mean, yeah, people might say that Von Miller move was a pretty big move. I'm not that high on Von Miller personally. I think he's better than Jerry Hughes, but um, yeah, I just think they did enough to slightly improve in a division where they already are the best team. So
Yeah, I think you hit on it there. Their schedule doesn't do them any favors this year. They open with a pretty difficult schedule.
yeah,
Their first 7 games are all against playoff teams from last year, with the exception of the Dolphins in Week 3, and that's important with Tre'Davious White coming off of the ACL injury. They've got the rookie Kyer Elam. You would like to ease Tre'Davious White back in, ease Kyer Elam in with a little bit softer schedule, but they've got a pretty difficult first 7 games. But the end of their schedule is so favorable. Starting from week 12, they play the Lions, the Patriots, the Jets, the Dolphins, the Bears, the Bengals, and the Patriots. And there's really only one of those teams that I would anticipate being any good. I think you can easily see them sweeping that week 12 through 18 schedule. So even if they come out and start a little slow out of the gate, which I think is a possibility, you get that heartbreaking loss at the end of the year. You get a little bit of hangover from that. You've got, like we said, some secondary issues early in the year that I fully expect to smooth out. I was a big Kyer Elam guy.
yeah.
Uh, I expect this team maybe to falter a little bit, maybe some people to get hyped about the Dolphins or something. Maybe the Dolphins win that week 3 game. I don't know. But I expect the Bills to win this division. I would not, I don't feel great about taking an over 11.5 wins. That's a really high number. If you push me, I would probably take the under, and I would call them like an 11-win team.
Yeah. No, I think that's pretty accurate. Again, looking at that schedule, and those, like you said, those first 7 games, they could easily come out of there 3-4, maybe even 2-5, depending on how things work out. And it's really that middle games, those middle 3 games that they really might determine their season. Because, like you said, they could certainly sweep, or at least maybe have one loss in those last 7 games or whatever. But that first 7 is going to be real dependent on if they can get to 3 or 4 wins out of there. If they can survive that, get a couple of wins in the middle there before their easy part of the schedule, then yeah, I think they could get to 11 or more wins. But I'm with you. I wouldn't, honestly. That's one of those where I'm just going to pass on betting on that line. So
Yeah, I don't have money on this line. If I did have to take it, I would take that under, though. We've got Prestige Taco chiming in off of YouTube, says, "Yo, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining. If you guys are watching live, drop us some comments here. Unless you're a Bengals fan that's going to yell at me for my takes earlier." And then,
I would like to add to that. Don't listen and fire away.
all right, let's roll on to the Dolphins. Miami Dolphins. You can't argue that they didn't have a splashy offseason. They go out and they trade a first, second, and fourth round pick, as well as a future 4th and 6th for Tyreek Hill. They were big players in free agency, signing Terron Armstead to be their left tackle. They also went out and got Cedric Wilson out of Dallas. They signed Connor Williams, the center, and running back Chase Edmonds out of Arizona. Guys that they lost Jason McCourty. He retired, and they traded Devontae Parker for a 3rd round pick in next year's draft. They have the number 19 strength of schedule, so it's right there with the Bills in terms of difficulty. Their over under is set at 8.5, with the over paying out at negative 165, the under paying out at plus 135. Ryan, what's your feeling on the Dolphins, their moves they made this offseason? What do you expect out of them this year?
Yeah, they went out and improved their team more than anybody in this division, in my opinion. They obviously have Tua. They brought in the Teddy Bridgewater. They, have a couple of running backs. And what did they do? They brought in Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, Sonny Michel, and probably seven other running backs that, they haven't officially announced. Bringing in Tyreek Hill to go along with Waddle, huge move. It really is going to give Tua all the weapons that he needs. They bring him back Gesicki in the fold. Like you said, they got a bunch of help on the offensive line. Armstead, Williams, absolutely great. Re-signing Xavier Howard, bringing in Melvin Ingram. They did a lot, and they didn't really lose too much. I mean, Will Fuller, Albert Wilson, those really don't do much. Jason McCourty was, 100 years old. So yeah, I think they did I think they had an amazing offseason. And I think they're finally giving Tua all the opportunity to come out and show what he has. They've improved the offensive line. They've improved the weapons. There's really no excuses. It's funny. It's very similar, obviously, to bring it back to the Eagles, just because Tua and Hurts are a little similar. Where they got AJ Brown and they, obviously already have a pretty darn good offensive line. So again, I think for both quarterbacks, there's no excuses, and that really holds true for Tua. And there's nothing after this season that they're going to be able to give him an excuse for not playing up to the ability that they drafted him. So I think Miami's an easy playoff team. I think they really came along towards the end of the season. And I think that's just going to continue to go into this upcoming season, especially with all the moves they just made.
Yeah, that is the storyline of this season for the Dolphins, is Tua the guy. I mean, there's no more excuses. They got a new coach. They have an elite wide receiver core now with Tyreek Hill, with Jalen Waddle, with Cedric Wilson. They have an elite left tackle. Now, there's questions about if he can stay healthy.
Sure.
Terron Armstead has never played a 16-game season in his NFL career. He's averaged 11 games a year. So, I mean, it's not like he's playing 2 games a season, but he's going to miss some games. He only played 8 games last season. But it's time to put up or shut up for Tua. And that's where they're at. They've got to find out if Tua is the guy. And, they made the acquisition of Tua, but they didn't give up a first-round pick for 2023. So if Tua flames out, they're still going to be – now they're not going to be in a prime position because their offense has got too many weapons to have a top 5 pick, but they'll have that first-round pick. They could try to make a move there. I would take the over, a slight over on this one. I think the Dolphins are about a 9-win team. I don't think they're probably going to make the playoffs. I don't think Tua is the guy. I've got a lot of doubts about Tua. I feel more confident in Jalen Hurts moving forward than I do in Tua,
Sure.
and I don't feel super confident in either.
Right.
But it is fair to say that Tua has had this deck stacked against him. He's had a defensive coach. He hasn't had weapons. He hasn't had an offensive line. So this is his year. It's his chance to prove people wrong or to prove people right, depending on the view you have of Tua. I don't think he gets it done, but I do think he makes people wonder. I think he's going to be in that middle ground. I don't think he's going to be good enough or bad enough. It's an easy answer.
Gotcha. Kind of like where we were at the end of last season with the Eagles. Just not sure what to do. But I don't know. I just think, the way that their schedule is, the fact that they have to play the Jets twice, they play Houston, Chicago, Detroit. They play some decent teams or some really bad teams. So that'll certainly help with the win total. I'm just, again, looking at the AFC landscape, and I think, Dolphins are most likely the number 2 in the division here. And, with maybe, as you said, maybe Cincinnati kind of faltering a bit. Obviously AFC West got a lot better, but I just like the way that they're trending, especially, the second half of last year. I like their new coach. He seems to be, putting, giving a shot of energy into that organization. So, especially after kind of all the stuff that just happened. But yeah, I don't know. I just have a feeling that Miami's going to sneak into the playoffs somehow. And it's not necessarily going to be because Tua, had this amazing year. I think he's just going to do enough because he has enough weapons. I mean, quite literally, they have 700 running backs. I don't know what's going on there. They literally have Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, Sonny Michel, Miles Gaskin, Salvin Ahmed. Like, these are all guys that could easily play significant minutes a lot of places, much less their own team, because they're all kind of, right there. And somebody's obviously going to, sneak out of that, probably Chase Edmonds or Mostert. But it's just hilarious how they have all of these running backs. And I've never seen anything like it. 5 like legit running backs that could potentially be a starter.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they work out that logjam in their backfield.
Yeah.
Let's roll on here to the New England Patriots. I guess you could say the Patriots had a strange offseason. So let's talk about the draft. They spent their first 2 picks on Cole Strange and Tyquan Thornton. I did not have either player in my top 100. So I started going back. I was curious. The Patriots make strange draft decisions all the time. So I went back into Pro Football Reference and was looking at their draft history. Do you know the last time the Patriots spent a first or a second round pick on a good player was? Any guesses?
Richard Seymour?
In 2014, in the second round, they drafted a guy named Jimmy Garoppolo.
Oh, yeah.
Who never even really played for him. But that's by my count, that's the last time they spent a first or a second round pick on a good player.
Wow.
So I would say they bombed out the draft.
Yeah,
oh, sorry. What was that?
No, I was just trying to think of when Richard Seymour was, because I guess he was a little bit earlier than that one.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'd have to look it up. I saw his name, but it was before Jimmy.
Way
G.
before, yeah.
Okay, so they signed offensive tackle Trenton Brown, wide receiver Ty Montgomery, safety Jabril Peppers, and then they traded for Devontae Parker. Losses, they lost J.C. Jackson, which is an underrated huge loss for them in the secondary. And then for some reason, I just don't get, they traded Shaq Mason for a 5th rounder. Shaq Mason was a really good starting guard, and you traded him, and then you went and spent a first-round pick on a guy that probably should have been a day 3 prospect in Cole Strange. So strange offseason for the Patriots, as they tend to be. They have the 25th ranked strength of schedule, so pretty difficult schedule. Their over-under is set at 8.5. What are you thinking on the Patriots, Ryan?
I got to go under. Like I said, I think they are, trending in the wrong direction. They made some very, very weird moves this year. I'm glad you said what you said about Shaq Mason. That made no sense to me. The fact that they not only lose him, they lose J.C. Jackson, Kyle Van Noy, Donta Hightower. They traded away Chase Winovich. Ted Karras, their center, goes away to the Bengals. Again, with all of that, you have a young quarterback in Mac Jones who, let's be honest, was a little up and down, but I think shows some promise. And what do? You literally trade away one of your best offensive linemen. Your defense completely suffers, and you don't really do much to address that in the draft. Like you said, you drafted these guys that should be, rounds later. The only significant move that you actually made, in my opinion, was, trading for Devontae Parker on the cheap. Ty Montgomery does really nothing for you. So yeah, I'm just curious as to what Bill Belichick is thinking. because it doesn't make sense. When you have a young quarterback, you want to put weapons around them. You want to build up your offensive line. You want to give them all of the opportunity to have, the best to utilize their own ability. And they're not doing that. So, in my opinion, they are going to trend down hard, even more so than last year. They snuck into the playoffs. They're not making it again. I'm hitting that under. Just I just have zero faith in this team.
Yeah, I am with you. I'm going to take the under on that as well. I just can't get past Matt Patricia and Joe Judge tag teaming play calling when neither guy has been an offensive play caller before. I don't
Yeah,
know how you saddle Mac Jones with that. I just don't get it. I don't understand what this team's doing. I'm taking the under. I think they could be kind of a dumpster fire this year.
agreed.
All right, let's roll on to a team that is a perpetual dumpster fire. That is the New York Jets, who had a low-key good offseason. Now, it's fairly easy to have a good offseason when you make 4 picks in the top 36 of the draft. But with those picks, they added Sauce Gardner, who I think is a true shutdown cornerback. They added Garrett Wilson at wide receiver, Jermaine Johnson at edge, and then Brees Hall in the early second round at running back, which is a pick I did not like. I like the player. I hated that value, but they added offensive guard Laken Tomlinson, safety DJ Reed, tight end CJ Uzoma, and safety Jordan Whitehead. Losses, they lost defensive tackle, and I'm going to butcher this, Foley Fatakasi. They lost safety Marcus May, offensive tackle Morgan Moses, and then compound that today in practice, apparently Micaiah Becton suffered an injury that they believe is a fractured kneecap that will make him miss the whole season. So that's a pretty big blow to the Jets. Not that Becton has been good, but you let Moses walk because you expected Becton to take that job, and now he's gone. So on top of that, they have the number 27 ranked schedule. So they've got a tremendously difficult schedule. Their over-under is set flat at 6. Now, that was before the Becton injury. I doubt the Becton injury has moved that line, but I didn't think to check it until just now. So what do you feel about the Jets here, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean that's a tough blow. I know it's not anything official as far as his status for the year, but yeah, it seems like he is done for the year, and that is unfortunate. Yeah, they did have. I think that was the perfect way of putting it. They had a low key, really good off season. Obviously they drafted great. I think their top 4 picks were home runs. I agree with you. The Hall pick, maybe not the greatest value, but you combine him, with who they have already, and what's his face? I'm drawing a blank. Second year player, Michael, the running back. Carter, thank you.
It's confusing because they have a Michael Carter on offense and a Michael Carter on defense. They've got a Zach Wilson and a Garrett Wilson on offense. The Jets. I even tweeted one time last year during a game that Michael Carter got hurt, and then
which one?
The running back got hurt, but then he was at the next possession. I noticed him on defense. I was like, why is he on defense? And I didn't even realize they had 2 Michael Carters.
But yeah, I like adding Hall with Carter. I think could be a good one. 1-2. This is all going to be dependent on Zach Wilson, as most things are. Especially we're talking about Josh Allen is technically the veteran quarterback in the division at this point, and he's only been in the league for a few years. So Zach Wilson, unfortunately, I have not been hearing great things about him in camp. It's kind of all over the place, not that accurate, but they obviously went out and drafted him a nice young weapon, and got him another running back to play with. Like you said, their off season was pretty decent. I mean, Laken Tomlinson is good. DJ Reed, Jordan Whitehead, again helping the defensive backfield to go along with what is a defense that's on the rise. I do actually like where their defense is heading. I'm not all that thrilled about their offense again, just because of Zach Wilson. But you said 6 was their number.
Yes. Over under was at 6, and I just
That,
checked. It hasn't changed, so it's
yeah,
still sitting at 6.
that's one again. I'm not playing. I think that's a little too spot on. Um, I don't foresee them improving that much. What were they, 4-13 last year? Yeah, I could see them getting to 5 or 6 wins. So that's why I don't know. I just wouldn't play. I wouldn't play that over under with them. But I think again, if Zach Wilson can even moderately improve, I think with everything that they've done in the offseason, I think this team is at least going slowly, but in the right direction.
Can I just give you some more nameception from the Jets?
Sure.
So they have running back Brees Hall, cornerback Bryce Hall.
Oh,
Okay. So that's on top of the Michael Carter
Michael
corner
Carter, right?
running back duo.
Right.
On the offensive line, we have starting center Connor McGovern and starting right tackle Connor McDermott. So we've got two Connor Max.
Max, love it.
And then on the defense, we've got a defensive tackle and linebacker duo of Quinnen Williams and Quincy Williams.
Quincy Williams, yep.
So I am impressed by their commitment to drafting an all-name team there. But
I mean,
for me, the big thing to look at this year, it's time for Joe Douglas to show something. The Jets roster has been terrible, and it looks like he picked the wrong quarterback, and you don't survive that as a GM. And everybody, when I was saying that after the draft, this is put up or shut up time. They're like, he had a great draft, and I'm not disputing that. It looks good on paper. Right. Will it translate to the field? Because when you have 4 picks in the top 36, it better look good on paper. Yeah. The Jets, I think, need to see some big returns sooner rather than later for the sake of Joe Douglas. And I do think they had a good offseason. Brees Hall pick aside, although he's a good player. I never got it with Zach Wilson. I didn't like him in the draft. I didn't see much to change my mind last year. It's just hard for me to get behind a team that traditionally has not been good with a quarterback I don't believe in. So I would take the under here if I had to make a selection. Although, it's possible. Maybe Zach Wilson figures it out. He has not looked good in camp so far, though.
No. Yeah, no, I agree with you on the Joe Douglas thing. Unfortunately, yeah, like you said, he did have a great draft on paper. Unfortunately, I just don't think he's going to be here to see any of the fruits of that labor. So it's unfortunate because, again, I truly believe that they are going in the right direction. It's just, again, at a very slow pace.
That is the kryptonite with quarterback selection. As a GM, you get one shot. There are not many GMs that get to pick 2 quarterbacks. Now, Howie Roseman, notable exception. Although you could argue that he picked the right quarterback. The quarterback he picked was in the middle of an MVP season that led to a Super Bowl. So I don't know that you discredit that. But there's not a lot of GMs out there that pick a bad quarterback and survive. And so for the things Joe Douglas has done with this roster, I think what might come back to get him is the Zach Wilson pick. For all the good that he's done, I don't know if you overcome Zach Wilson.
Yeah, agreed. And like I said, even if Zach Wilson develops into something halfway decent, it just seems like again, it's kind of at a slower pace. And with the NFL that we live in now, rookies need to come out and be all pros. Their first year, second year. So. We're getting a little spoiled with how good these rookies are coming out. So unfortunately, that has translated. Back in the day, I mean, how long did Tim Couch last in Cleveland? It felt like he was there for 7 years as their starter, and they were just like, well, he's our first number 1 overall pick. We got to let it see it play out. And nowadays, you barely get 3 years, and you're out of here. So. It's a different NFL for sure, and that has translated over to GMs as well.
We even had Aaron Rodgers sits for 3 years. They draft him in the first round, and in his first 3 seasons, he only throws like 100 passes, 143 passes in his first 3 years in the league behind Brett Favre. So, and then he comes out and goes 6-10 his first year. And then
Yeah.
of course it goes on ever, but there's not the time for that anymore. It's a much
No.
faster
Oh my
pace.
gosh. Yeah. No. We'll never see that.
Yeah.
Again, Jordan Love is. I mean, you might as well write him off now.
Yeah.
Even if Aaron Rodgers retires after this year, there's no hope for Jordan Love right now.
When we have that expectation because of teams like we're about to talk about, like the Bengals, because you have the Bengals with second year quarterback Joe Burrow, first year receiver Jamar Chase. They light the league on fire. And so, it just shortens those timelines. But the Bengals, coming off of their Super Bowl season, they added Daxton Hill, the safety slash kind of Swiss Army knife type player, in the first round. Now you could argue they did that so they don't have to pay Jesse Bates, but they added Daxton Hill. He's kind of some insurance there. They went out and they signed a trio of offensive linemen in Alex Kappa, Lyle Collins, and Ted Karras. So they dramatically, in theory, improved their offensive line. Although one of the biggest indicators of offensive line success is that continuity. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly they can gel together. They especially week one, they're sitting there and they're facing off against TJ Watt and that Steelers pass rush. So that'll be interesting to see. They lose tight end CJ Uzoma, cornerback Trey Waynes, and free safety Ricardo Allen. They have the 26th ranked strength of schedule, as I mentioned earlier in my little mini rant. Their over-under is set at 9.5 wins, with the over paying out minus 145. The under is at plus 115. Ryan, how do you feel about the Bengals this year?
Again, that's a tough line. They were 10-7 last year. They ended up winning a division that I think a lot of people just assumed was going to be much better. And like you had mentioned earlier, they got hot at the right time and got themselves a division win, and got some favorable matchups for themselves, and almost ended up winning the Super Bowl. But I definitely think they're gonna kind of either stay status quo or to even take a slight step back. I personally still think they end up making the playoffs. But it's not going to be, it's not going to be easy. It's not this, where hey, we have all these young players and we just made the Super Bowl, so naturally we're just going to keep going up and up and up. I don't necessarily see it that way. Now, while I absolutely love what they did for their offensive line, Lyle Collins, Karras, Kappa, those are all great moves. I mean, granted, they ended up losing Riley Reef and Quentin Spain, but obviously huge upgrade. And considering that Burrow has obviously lost some time, due to injury, I think that was an amazing move. They already have most likely the best wide receiver core in all of football, and they did what they needed to do to help the offensive line. Now their defense, on the other hand, not great. They drafted their safety to maybe potentially replace Jesse Bates, but they gotta figure that situation out sooner than later. Are they going to trade him? Are they just going to sign him because he doesn't clearly want to play on the franchise tag? I honestly, this is probably one of those where I don't play the over under. I think again, they're probably right around 9 or 10 wins. Their schedule is up and down, so I can't really get a good read on where they may fit in all of that. So yeah, I think they squeeze in to the playoffs, potentially as a wild card. I think it's going to be a 9 or 10 win team that wins this division. So.
Yeah, they surrendered 70 sacks of Joe Burrow last year, and they significantly improved the offensive line. This is him coming off an ACL tear, by the way.
Right. Yeah.
Significantly improved the offensive line. What else did they do? I don't feel like they did anything else, and I feel like there were some other things that they needed to do. The offense is good. The defense is where my concerns are. And looking at this roster or this schedule, they have got to start the year hot, because their last 6 games of the year, heck, 7, I guess, if you want to throw the Titans in, November 27th, the Titans, they were the 1 seed in the AFC last year. Then they played the Chiefs, then the Browns, then the Buccaneers, then the Patriots, which is an easier game, but then the Bills and then the Ravens. Like, out of that final 7 games, like, they could go 2-5. They could go 3-4 there. They have got to get out to a hot start to the season, because
Yeah.
when they come out of their bye week, it is a very uphill climb to the playoffs. They need to start hot. Maybe they will start hot. I'm not saying they should start hot. It's a fairly easy schedule at the beginning. But if I had to take the over under here, this isn't one I have money on, but I would take the under. Like I said, last year they were a 10-win team.
Probably.
They would have to repeat being a 10-win team with all of the factors that went into that last year. And I just don't know that that's super likely. So I'm going to take the under on this one. Maybe I got them at like a 9-win team.
Yeah, I think I kind of agree with you. I think they're going to be around that 9 or 10. That's kind of why, again, gun to the head, I would go for the under. I mean, looking at their defense outside of Bates, they really don't have. They have what? Jay Hendrickson, who again had a good year. Outside of that, like, they don't really have anybody. They have no linebackers. Their corners are pretty bad. Everybody else on the defensive line are average at best. Von Bell, was a first rounder coming over from New Orleans, but he hasn't really done much with his career. So, obviously they go out and draft Dax Hill, and most likely he'll be behind Bates, should Bates still be on this team. I think in the third round they ended up getting a D tackle, Zach Carter. Again, great, but again, not nothing that moves the needle. They clearly need help on the defense, and I think that's what's going to hold them back this year.
And that's the thing too. Jesse Bates has them held hostage right now because he has yet to sign the franchise tag. So they can't even trade him if they wanted to.
Right. Well, yeah, actually, yeah, you're right.
So unless he decides to play ball, if he plays, they can't do anything. And so that also hangs over there. How far is Jesse Bates willing to push this thing remains a big question as well.
Yeah, I agree.
So, let's roll on to the Baltimore Ravens. Baltimore Ravens are perennial winners of the offseason, and this year is no different. In the draft, they cleaned up. They took Kyle Hamilton and Tyler Linderbaum in the first round. They got David Ajabo, who was a first-round talent prior to rupturing his Achilles, in the second round. And then they took Travis Jones, who I had a early second-round grade on in the late third round. So they just cleaned up the draft. They went out and they signed Marcus Williams. Safety, they signed offensive tackle Morgan Moses. They signed pass rushers Calais Campbell and Justin Houston, and they signed cornerback Kyle Fuller. On their losses, they lost cornerback Anthony Everett, center Bradley Bozeman, wide receiver Sammy Watkins, who has really underachieved his whole career. Alejandro Villanueva, I believe, retired.
He did, yes, he did.
As I say, I know he's gone. I think he retired. And then they, of course, lost Marquise Brown. They traded Marquise Brown and a third-round pick for pick 23, which they then flipped for pick 25 and 130. So basically, they traded Marquise Brown and pick 100 for Tyler Linderbaum and punter Jordan Stout is what that breaks down to. They had the 11th ranked strength of schedule. So they're on the easier end of the spectrum in terms of schedules. Their over-under is set at 9.5. How do you feel about the Ravens, Ryan?
Yeah, again, I think honestly, I think this might be the tightest raced division in all of football. I think all four of these teams could theoretically have a claim to the division at this point, with the Browns probably being the fourth, just given their quarterback situation, whatever that ends up being with the pending suspension of Deshaun Watson. But they had a great draft. They re-signed all their key players that they needed to. They brought in Marcus Williams, who I really, really liked and would have loved for the Eagles to bring in. But then, they traded Marquise Brown for no reason. Sammy Watkins went to the Packers. Not that he was that huge, but again, usually week 1, week 2, Sammy Watkins balls out, and then you don't hear from them the rest of the year. Um, they're obviously their team is built, around their defense. I mean, they have studs everywhere. I could literally just go down their defensive depth chart and just be like, yeah, I'd take that guy. I'd take that guy. I mean, Marlon Humphreys, Marcus Williams, Chuck Clark, Marcus Peters. Like the defensive backfield alone is insane. Kyle Fuller is technically their nickelback corner. Um, so they're obviously defense first, but it's just strange how they went ahead and traded Brown. Um, for Lamar Jackson, somebody that's again going to be coming up to a contract, extension in a couple of years. And he's been very vocal about getting him weapons. Yes, they have Mark Andrews, one of the best tight ends in the league, and J.K. Dobbins if he can stay healthy, along with Gus Edwards, and they actually brought in Mike Davis, who finally got his shot after having an amazing year backing up McCaffrey when he went down. Fell flat on his face. So if he can even come close to half of what he did in that Carolina year, they'll have a really nice set of running backs. They also still have Justice Hill too, which is great. And actually, didn't Corey Clement sign there too? Not that he'll factor in, but whatever. Just always make an Eagles point. And their offensive line I really like. Morgan Moses, drafted Linderbaum, Ronnie Stanley. I mean, Zeitler they got from the Giants in the offseason. I really like their offensive line. It's just they have no receivers. I mean, Rashad Bateman was hurt. We don't really know what you have with him. Devin Duvernay, please. James Proche. The rest of the guys, I don't even know who the heck they are.
Their top three projected wide receivers combined for under 800 yards receiving last year.
Yeah.
So throw this tweet up here from Warren Sharp. Notable first-round quarterbacks and where their team ranked in money spent on wide receivers during their rookie deals. And he lists out, Patrick Mahomes, number 2, number 7, number 22. Josh Allen, 3, 16, 32. Murray, 9, 9, 18. Burrow, 12, 11, 1. Right. Herbert, 2, 2, 14. Lamar Jackson, 32, 22, 28, 27. Like
that's insane.
It is criminal how they have handled Lamar Jackson. People want to say Lamar Jackson can't pass. How about you give him a receiver that should be in the NFL? And I actually did not fault them on the trade of Marquise Brown. I would have taken a first round pick for Marquise Brown.
It was great value. Don't get me wrong.
But you gotta go get Lamar Jackson some weapons.
Right, go out and then use that for somebody, or at least in the second round. There were a couple of great second rounders. I mean, I think we've been on many shows together where we gushed about somebody like George Pickens. And just there were plenty of options basically, and they they seem content on having Mark Andrews be the focal receiver on this offense, and I think they're just kind of hoping Rashad Bateman turns into something. We don't know. We just don't know. I mean, he was hurt, so I think we're all hopeful that he can be an actual number one, but you're basically coming in. He's basically coming into a rookie year right now because of his injury last year. So you have no idea. I just don't get their philosophy when it comes to the offense and adding weapons. So I would personally go under if I had to do something. I think they're about an 8 or 9 win team, and I think they fall short and don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, I would take a slide over here. I'm such a big Lamar Jackson guy. I really do think he can pull if they're just healthy, which they weren't last year, and you typically expect that to kind of return to the norm. If they can just be healthy, I think Lamar Jackson can get this team into the playoffs. I think that defense should be really good, and maybe somebody will be able to catch a football for Lamar. We'll find out.
Right.
All right, let's roll on to the Cleveland Browns, who have the distinction of having the worst schedule graphic that I included here. This is just hideous color schemes. I don't know what that maroon is,
Yeah,
but
where has that ever been in their color scheme?
yeah, I don't know. But
That's-
we'll roll through some of their additions. They got Jakeem Grant, who actually I think got hurt in practice today and might miss the whole season as well. So Jakeem
oh,
Grant,
yes he did.
do you remember what the injury was? I remember seeing that, but
man, I, I want to say his knee, but I could be
yeah,
totally thinking about somebody else. But yeah,
I
no, I definitely saw that too.
I was thinking maybe like MCL. I don't remember. Don't quote me on that, but I believe Grant
That's
went down and he's expected to miss the season. So that wipes out that. They signed defensive tackle Taven Bryant, and they signed quarterback Jacoby Brissett because their expected starting quarterback Deshaun Watson, who they gave up a first rounder in each of the next 3 years for, as well as a third, fourth, and fourth, uh, is set to miss the first 6 games of the season, with the NFL appealing that to make it a year-long suspension. Uh, we won't dive too deeply into that, but yeah, they traded Amari Cooper. They got Amari Cooper from Dallas for a fifth and a sixth, and what was essentially a
deal.
cap dump for Dallas.
Yeah,
Phenomenal deal for the Browns. I was surprised that nobody else offered up more for Cooper. They lost Austin Hooper, the tight end. They lost wide receiver Jarvis Landry, who they cut, which made way for Amari Cooper. And they lost J.C. Treader.
yeah,
They have the number 8 strength of schedule, so they're on the easier end of the scheduling spectrum. They do not have a Vegas line right now because the biggest question is how many games is Watson going to play?
sure.
And Vegas is not going to set a line not knowing that answer. So we don't have an over under here. And honestly, it's really hard to even talk about what to expect from this team.
Yeah,
So I honestly don't have much to say about them other than it's disgusting that Deshaun Watson is on their roster. It's disgusting that he was given a fully guaranteed contract with only $1 million this year so they could prevent him from losing a bunch of money should he get suspended. It's also disgusting that the NFL gave the Browns by far the easiest schedule in the NFL the first 6 weeks of the season to make way for that suspension. Although they are appealing it now, so at least we'll see what happens with that. But beyond that, I don't really have much to say. I have no idea what to expect because we just don't know what's going to happen at quarterback.
yeah. I mean, this is obviously the toughest one to figure out. Just again, are they gonna uphold the 6 game? Are they gonna suspend him for the year? Are we gonna meet somewhere in the middle, 10, 12 games, somewhere like that? Yeah, honestly, looking at the schedule, it's you have to wonder what if they were doing that on purpose. Carolina, the Jets, Falcons, Patriots, Steelers. Again, you don't know what you're getting with Steelers. Obviously, the Chargers should be pretty decent, but yeah, it's it's unfortunate because yeah, the NFL just continues to put their foot in their mouth when it comes to disciplining their players. And there's no rhyme or reason to most of them. You look at, some of the suspensions over the years. I mean, hell, just look recently. I mean, you suspended Calvin Ridley for putting a what, $1,500 bet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, okay, dumb, stupid, shouldn't have done it. But a whole year for that, and yet you have almost it got up to 30 women accusers of Deshaun Watson doing some inappropriate whatever, and you just sweep that under the rug and call it a 6 game suspension? Like, what does that say to the fans? What does that say to the female fans? I mean, you're basically alienating, your female fans by allowing this dude to play. So that alone was just so stupid. But
I can't
anyway,
wait. I
getting
can't
back
wait
to
until that Ravens game, the 7th game of the year, if he's only suspended 6 games. I can't
yeah,
wait till that 7th game when he comes out along with everybody else wearing pink. to support breast cancer awareness in his first game back in the NFL.
Oh my God, I literally almost just spit out my drink. Oh my God, that's right.
Talk about optics.
Oh, that's going to be so bad. Oh man, the NFL is not smart sometimes. Uh, anyway, outside of the Deshaun Watson thing, and listen, if we're gonna just take all the BS out of it, they obviously it was a good move from a skill improving your team point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Deshaun Watson is one of the better quarterbacks in the league for sure when he's not suspended. They got Amari Cooper on the cheap. They could obviously absorb the contract, especially with the Deshaun Watson contract, how that was done. They re-signed Ronnie Harrison, Anthony Walker, Davion Clowney. They traded Chase Winovich from the Patriots. They re-signed Njoku. They did a really good job off-season wise, retaining their players and going out and getting a couple of guys.
And Jacoby Brissett, 2019, when he started that season for the Colts, they were like a 500 team. I think it was like 7-8 in his starts.
Yeah, not bad.
He hasn't played a lot since then. I think he got 5 starts in Miami last year, but he's serviceable. I mean, he's not what you want, but he's serviceable. If Deshaun Watson comes back after 6 games, like looking at that schedule, with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, I would argue they should beat the Panthers, the Jets, and the Falcons.
Yeah,
maybe the Patriots. Bill Belichick's always got something cooked up on defense, but I mean, you could get to 500 there, and so they've got a path to being in contention for the playoffs. Pending what happens with the Deshaun Watson stuff.
Yeah, I mean, considering you have to play Houston, you have to play the Commanders, you have to play the Saints, and especially if Winston is out, you don't really know what's going on there. Oh, by the way, it was his Achilles. Jakeem Grant. It was his Achilles. So yeah, that's not great news. But yeah, again, I kind of think with the whole suspension looming, they have to be considered kind of in the basement right now of this division. Like you said, if they can survive and win 3 of these games, which they should be able to, again, that would certainly help. But the rest of their schedule isn't easy by any means, even with Deshaun Watson at the helm. The simple fact is they, still have to play the Ravens twice, still have to play the Bengals twice. They play, an upcoming Miami team. They play Tampa Bay. They play the Bills. So yeah, it's not necessarily that easy after their first, 6 games. So they're going to have an uphill climb, and that's all pending if Deshaun Watson is able to play that 7th game against the Ravens at Baltimore. So. Yeah, what did you say their over-under was? Oh, yeah.
They don't have one. Yeah, they're the only team that doesn't have, at least at the book that I looked at.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I'd say, again, they're right in that mix of, 8 or 9 wins. I think I would lean more towards 8 just because of the second half of their schedule is pretty tough. And, probably betting on the fact that Deshaun Watson gets more than 6 games, because I know the NFL is certainly pushing for it now that they, realize that they effed up. So yeah, I'd say this is probably a basement team, but still, I think, top to bottom, I think this division might have, the most kind of parity when it comes to this whole division. I mean, the division could be separated by 1 or 2 games, the whole division.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's roll on to the last team in the division, another team with some quarterback uncertainty that we'll get to. That is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They added quarterback Kenny Pickett in the first round of the draft. They also snagged George Pickens, he was number 5 wide receiver for me.
Love that.
I had a first-round grade on him in the second round, and he looks to be the real deal in camp. They got Marvin Leal, who at one point was considered like a top 5 pick. Now, he fell as the season went on, but they got Calvin Austin, the speedy wide receiver. out of Memphis. They also, in free agency, they got offensive guard James Daniels, center Mason Cole,
Yep.
linebacker Miles Jack, quarterback Mitchell Trubisky, and a pair of corners in Akilo Weatherspoon and Levi Wallace. They also lost some receivers. They lost Ray McLeod and Juju Smith-Schuster. They lost Trey Turner. Stephon Tuitt retired. They cut Joe Schobert. And then Big Ben Roethlisberger also retired. They have the number 29 strength of schedule this year. So they're on the easy end. They have an over-under at 7.5 in Vegas. How do you feel about the Steelers, Ryan?
Yeah, 7.5. I think that's a little disrespectful. I mean, I know obviously they're switching from Roethlisberger to Pickett. Again, one would assume. Um, I mean, I suppose, what's his face? Um,
Trubisky?
yeah, Trubisky or even
Even at Matt Canada said that Mason Rudolph might,
Mason Rudolph. Yeah,
which is just if you pay Mitchell Trubisky $14 million and draft a first round quarterback, also you can start Mason Rudolph.
sorry, Mason Rudolph, right? Yeah, I hear he's actually having a pretty decent camp. So, yeah, regardless of the uncertainty of who actually is going to start and when, I think they have capable quarterbacks to do the job. And considering they have a pretty easy schedule, they obviously play the Jets, they play Carolina, they play the Giants, they play Houston. They play the Commanders, even though it does look like they have the old Redskin logo on there, which is pretty funny. Uh, they play yeah they play the Jaguars, so they have winnable games. And again, their defense is always going to be good. I mean, T.J. Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick. I mean, they have plenty of great players, and they always seem to have wide receivers. Chase Claypool was supposed to be the next best thing, and he's not even considered the best wide receiver on their team. Deontay Johnson, and then they obviously go and grab Pickens. That's a pretty nice 1, 2, 3. Considering they're all pretty relatively young as well. They have Freiermuth, who's kind of I feel like is going to take a jump this year. And then they also have, second year Najee Harris, who I think they literally just came out and said something like, well, we don't want to run him 7,000 times a game like we did last year. We're going to limit him slightly, which I personally think is a great move because we've all seen the stats. If you look into running backs who hit X amount of number of touches, the fall off is real the next year. And so I think they're going to try and limit that as much as they can within their own ability to kind of limit his, rushes, his touches, so they don't, in 5 years, they don't actually kill this guy. So, yeah, I think they didn't really do anything that necessarily wowed me. I did like their draft. But offseason, notes again. Nothing really stands out. I mean, obviously, James Daniels is pretty good guard, and Miles Jack I was a huge fan of. I mean, you're already adding him to a pretty amazing defense. So yeah, I think again, as I've been saying every time I mention a team that you're essentially kind of they're all going to be right there. I personally would hit the over on this. I think they're, again, kind of in that 8 or 9 win. You said there were 7.5. I'm hitting that over. I think they can get to 9 wins and battle for the division with the other teams. Because, like I said, depending on everything with Deshaun Watson will depend on whether or not the Browns are in this mix. But the other 3 teams, I feel like, could be right there. And you could easily make an argument for all 3 of them and eventually all 4 of them to be division winner.
Yeah, I'm taking the over on this as well.
Yeah.
The Steelers went 9-7-1 last year, and Ben Roethlisberger was an active detriment to this football team.
Shell of himself.
If Mitch Trubisky plays the way he did in Chicago, he would be better for this team than Ben Roethlisberger was last season. That's not
Ouch.
a knock on Roethlisberger's career. He had a great career. He just took a nosedive at the end, and that's fine. It happens. But and that's, setting aside Kenny Pickett, who I was not a believer in, but they invested a first round pick in him. One of those guys has to win the job. But the over under is at 7.5. 7.5. For them to hit the under, that would mean they would have to have a record of 7-10 or worse. And in
Yeah.
the 15 years that Mike Tomlin has been the Steelers head coach, he has never been below 500.
No,
Wow.
I was going to say I think he was once or twice at 500,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
every time at least a game over. It's the
Yeah.
consistency and within that organization, let alone the Mike Tomlin era, is astounding.
Yeah.
And I don't see them. I think this might be the year they go 8-9, but you could easily argue they go 9-8 or 10-7. Honestly,
Yeah.
I just don't see 7 wins. I don't know. I don't know how, but they find a way. It's Mike
Yeah.
Tomlin. He finds a way to motivate that team to be better than they are sometimes.
And I'm kind of a Levi Wallace truther too. I was always kind of a big Levi Wallace fan, and I personally think that it helps them out a little bit to they open the year with the Giants. Okay, that's a game that they should be able to win regardless of who's playing quarterback. Then they've got Houston week 3. That should be a pretty easy game. And so you can kind of you got the Browns in week 6 when we know for a fact Deshaun Watson will be out. We don't know what'll happen after that, but they've got some games they can win in the early part of their schedule while they're figuring out the quarterback position. They got a good running back, an improved but still not great offensive line. They've got all the weapons. They just need a quarterback that can be a game manager. And I think this team, I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but I do have money on this one. I'm slamming that over 7.5 wins. I feel pretty confident there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I just think, with their schedule, with Mike Tomlin at the helm, and again, yeah, maybe it's Trubisky for the first, half of the season even, or Mason Rudolph, or who, again, one of those two before Kenny Pickett kind of figures it out and takes over. I do like Pickett. I definitely think he's probably going to be the best quarterback out of this class. Just again seeing, I've watched a lot of Pitt film, so maybe I'm a little too close to it than most, but I don't necessarily think he's going to be like a stud in this league. I just think he's going to be an above average quarterback that'll do enough, and certainly better than Trubisky and Mason Rudolph. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that is going to wrap up our divisional preview here. We talked about the AFC North, the AFC East. If you are a fan of a team in any other division, make sure you check those out on Archive. They are all there. Ryan, before we get out of here, do you got any final thoughts for us? Anything you want to plug?
Yeah, no, just had a great time. Glad I could come on and do this. Yeah, it's always fun when I can talk anything kind of outside of my norm, which is usually the Eagles and the other Philly sports. So obviously I always kind of brought it back a little bit to the birds, but yeah, no, just doing my thing over at Philly Sports Alliance. Just again, if you're out there, make sure you follow us on Facebook. Just search Philly Sports Alliance, YouTube Philly Sports Alliance, and then of course on Twitter, right down here, Philly Sports PSA. Yeah, we got shows all over the place. Obviously, we got the Painted Lines shows throwing up on our YouTube or on our Facebook. We got a couple of good things coming up in the future, and yeah, the only other thing I would say is we partnered up with Philly Sports Trips, and we're getting a bus. We're going down to DC for the Commanders game, Eagles Commanders, Week 3, September 25th, 3:25. Charter bus, tickets to the game, sick tailgate. Can't ask for anything more. So head over to Philly Sports Trips.
Sounds awesome. You guys be sure to check that out. If the charter bus was leaving from Oklahoma, Year 25. I would be there because that sounds awesome.
I was going to say we might have to send one out a week in advance to get you, but yeah, we'll do it. We'll figure it out. You get enough people to come with you, right?
Yeah, something like that. All right. Well, you guys be sure and check out Ryan's content. Check out the show that we're on every week together, 8 o'clock on Tuesday nights. We literally came into this one right from there, Birds of the Round Table, where we break down Eagles storylines with rotating panel of guests. So that's a lot of fun. So
yeah, that is.
All right. Well, thank you guys, as always, for joining us for episode number 67 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and let's be honest, we know that you do, be sure you smash that subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. Turn on notifications. Give us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts. That really helps the content get out there to other people. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at _TPL. Ryan is at Philly Sports PSA. So from me, from Ryan, from the Painted Lines, Philly Sports Alliance, the whole crew, we will see you guys next time.